Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, today I have Kalee Boisvert. She has been in the financial industry for over 15 years, but her love of money started very young. She actually had a very similar experience to mine, grew up in a single parent household and watched her mom struggle with finances and, wish she could help. And then the story that she'll tell us a little bit about is realize she needed to get hers together. And this started her own journey to financial literacy, which I struggled with in the past. I've spoken about with that struggle. And so I'm really happy to talk to you because this is something so many people struggle with. So welcome to the show, Kalee.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
So the only difference between us is you saw that struggle and was like, I'm not going to let that happen to me. And became financially literate. I saw the struggle and kind of ran away a little bit from it. So had to go do a turnaround later. My journey started later, but let's talk a little bit about that. And it obviously we can all, even if we don't have the experience, we can see how someone struggling and watching a single mom, struggle could be tough and could make you go, ooh, I don't want this for myself. But where did your journey to financial literacy begin within that? What was one of the first things you were like, okay, I guess I'm going to need to learn how to X? You know what I mean? Where was it?
Yeah. Great question. And you're right. It could go kind of either way. When we're growing up with that, money, it's so different for each of us. But it's so impactful, where we kind of came from, or our stories and where it all began with our money journey. But for me, it was seeing my mom and the struggle and the stress. I really wanted to do something to help. And then, as a child, and I was maybe 7, 8 years old when my dad left, there wasn't a lot, I felt really helpless, or not that there wasn't a lot I could do. But then I remember on one occasion, I think I was around 9 years old, and I was asking her over and over again for a Super Nintendo because my best friend had one and I wanted one so bad. And of course we couldn't afford it. But instead of giving me her typical response, or I think she probably did, but then she was getting tired of me asking over and over again. And then she said something different. And she said, well, if you want one so bad, you can use your own money, save up and buy it yourself. And I was like, whoa, it was just the possibility opened, because before it was no, we can't have that. We don't have the money, and there was that whole scarcity. So it was that belief was okay, then we can't have any of that. But this was this eye-opening experience of oh, I can have it. I just have to get it on my own. So I was okay, I'll do it. Right. Challenge accepted. And so I saved so diligently. I remember I would put it in this little tin can I had in my closet, and I'd count how much money I have. And I was only 9, so I didn't have a lot of earnings potential. I think it took me close to a year to save up. And my sister let me come along to some of her babysitting gigs and help her out and things like that. But when I was able to buy it with my own money, all my own money, it just felt amazing. The feeling I had, that empowerment of, wow, I can do this and I can have this. It finally just felt well, money isn't this thing that, some people have and I can't have. It was okay. It's possible for me. I just have to, get it myself. I just have to work for it, or I have to find ways to make money. So for me, that's where it began. I had this fascination of okay, I can still do these things. And then I just kind of kept that up. It was one thing after another. Then I wanted a dog. And so same thing, if you buy it with your own money. So I was okay, I'll buy it with my own money. And I saved up. And
she was probably damn it.
Yeah, I know.
she keeps succeeding. I don't want the freaking dog in the house.
Yeah, exactly. A dog's a lot of work. And then when I was 16, it was my first car. I worked double shifts. I would go from Dairy Queen to Subway, and I would work 13-hour days in the summer. So on my summer vacation, go from one to another. I remember starting my day at Subway, going to Dairy Queen for my shift there in the evening, smelling like Subway with my free Subway sandwich that I would eat before my Dairy Queen shift started. And again, I saved up and I bought that car. And amazingly, like I had a car before my other friends had a car that, had parents that were going to buy them cars and things like that. And I was able to kind of even beat them to it and save for my own. So for me, it was so empowering. It was like, wow, like, I guess realizing that whole poverty, it's not like a cycle that we necessarily have to perpetuate, that it's, things can be different. And so I guess it was just like empowering, and having that, I was like, wow, I want to share this with other people. I want to share this with other women, that you can have all the things and you can achieve it. Like if I could do it, I thought like anyone can do this stuff. And that's really like my early beginnings and where I've, come from and what I do now. I bring that same energy to my business and working with women. It's just like, well, what do you want to achieve? Like, let's make it happen, because of course it's possible.
I think there could be some people listening, including myself, mind you, where I have worked that hard too, like as a teen, you know what I mean? Where, and it takes a long time because you're not making that much money.
No.
But then hopefully
like
it builds
an hour.
But then you have that work ethic, builds the confidence in like, oh no, I can go do it myself. And then you build over time. If you have an education and and, or even if you don't, right. You can exceed and go onward and upward and forward. So after, your youth experience, did you jump directly into the financial industry? Where you're like, oh, this is my calling because this is my jam and I'm already doing it since I was 9.
Yeah. I was like, I love money. So it just progressed that way that I went in to do a business degree. And I remember like hearing about the finance course. It was like the dreaded course that people would talk about. And they would like say, you better lower your course load. Like it's so hard. And the professor's so hard. He's been teaching since like my mom was in university and stuff. I'm like, oh, like all these stories. I was like, so scared to take this finance course. And then I did it. And again, I loved it because it was like, it was math, it was numbers, it was money again. And I was like, well, this is amazing. So it was like, again, people kind of putting those beliefs in our head. And I think we have that as women too, of like, women aren't good at like, or as women, we often say like, I'm not good with math. I'm not good with numbers. I'm not good with money and things like that. And it's like, some of it, I think it's not even ours. Like we're just taking that on from the world and what society is saying and other people. And you kind of have to go like, is that really even mine? Like, how do I know if I'm not great with money or whatnot? Or have I just decided that because that's what I'm hearing other people say, or that's what people have told me? But yeah, so I just kind of continued on. I did my finance degree and went on that path, and I landed in like a role assisting an advisor right out of university. And I remember looking at him like day one and in my head going like, I'm going to do what he's doing. Because I was obviously just his assistant at the time. And I wanted to be the one, running the show and doing what he was doing. So I knew from that point on, and I was excited because I knew it meant that I could work with women and talk about money and investing and have like women, get inspired and confident and get excited, hopefully, about money. And that was what I wanted to do. So it just sort of, I don't know if I do believe in like kind of that power of like, you're going to go on the path that you're meant to be on and whatnot. And I think mine just found me really early on and kept kind of guiding me in that direction.
Let's talk about some of the money stories, because I'm assuming you don't struggle as much, right? Like working as hard as we did when you were working like the 2 jobs to get the car, right?
Yeah.
Your life is probably a little bit better that way in terms of time management, I'm assuming.
I'd like to say so, maybe not though. So, and I would say that's the mindset work and the money baggage. Cause I had the aha moment just a couple of years ago. I was working with a life coach, and we were doing the whole wheel of, the different parts of your life. And it was like, how much time, like, how you feel about like family and relationships and hobbies and, business and things like that. And it felt like all of my energy was going to my business and building it. And it didn't feel in balance at all. So I had to do more work. So I think it's been a constant, learning experience for me. Like it definitely hasn't come easy, that path, because I still grew up saying you have to work hard for money. That's what I believed. Right. And that's what I was doing. I was working the 2 jobs. And so even after university, when I was in like my career type position, I was working 2 jobs. I was working like in the evening at Shoppers. And one day I asked myself, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why? Why do I am I working 2 jobs?
Right. Well, I love that you're so vulnerable to point out your own shortcomings in your personal money story with regards to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like the message I had was that you have to work hard for money. And that's not real, right? That was my belief and from my upbringing and what I experienced. So I had to work on that because I knew I would burn out because being, someone in this role, like it's a service position and I only have as much hours as I have in a day to like give back and do the work I do. So I have, and it's a constant. That's one that I have to deal with a lot. So I do always stress for people to like look into your own beliefs about money and your money mindset and that money baggage. Like, what is it that you find yourself telling yourself about money? And for me, it's like you work hard. And so that's one I have been working on and continue to work on when I find myself getting caught up thinking I have to work it like late into the night and things like that to, I guess, be like, show my value or something like that. So it's been, and I think it's different for everyone depending on that upbringing, that journey. Like you said, yours was different than mine and you sort of hid from money for a long time too. So I think we can all kind of look back and say, how did it start for us? And what are some of the things that come up, but then consciously decide, like, again, that's one that I'm consciously deciding to get rid of. Like, I don't want to believe that money is hard, that it takes a lot, or you have to work hard for money. I don't want that one anymore. So that's the one I'm getting rid of. And then, we have to
I'm so glad you're talking to me because like that is one I just have never believed.
Good.
Yeah. But also I'd like to ask this. Regardless of how it may have taken you a moment to become aware of this within yourself, that you were like, oh, wait, why? It's 11:30 p.m. What the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
You must have seen examples working in the financial industry of people who were very, very wealthy who didn't seem to work that hard.
Yes.
And so can you give a few of those examples? Because again, like it's showing the opposite of that, which again, I see, I see a lot of it, but then I guess too, part of the quote, work hard is so, of course, like subjective, right? But I would say that, whatever's enjoyable, because usually people are like, work, it's a stress thing. So if it's not, that's great. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're right. Looking to those other people, because exactly, they were showing me that that's not the case. Like around me, it was advisors that were spending their, I live in a very cold climate. So they were spending their winters like half the year somewhere hot. And obviously, and that was before even when, we were doing as much like remote work and things like that. So right. They were doing that for years and they were leaving, like the stock markets close in my time zone at 2 p.m. And so they were like heading out of the office at 2 p.m. and stuff. And I was still working away until like the late hours. And so, yes, all around me, I was definitely not seeing that. But I think for me too, it was exactly like a money mindset thing that I had to work on and a worthiness element. And we have to acknowledge the relationship between money and worthiness too. Like, I think that's one of the challenges of growing up in poverty. And I write about it in my book that's coming out this year. And we can chat about that in a bit. But yes, I talk about how for me, it became like that shame about not having money, because it was like I was seeing the little girls, like I was like, again, really young, and I was seeing them get all the things they asked for and wanted, and I wasn't. And it started being like, it's not that we don't have enough. It was like, I'm not enough. And it became a worthiness factor that I had to actually deal with as well and work on. So I think that probably that working hard thing, it was a mixture of the mindset of like money, you have to work hard for money, but also feeling worthy of receiving money. And that's a big one. I think people have to dive deeper into, and we put like, it's almost like what we make, we put like a dollar value on our worth sometimes. Like it translates to our worthiness, our income level. And that's something that's like, well, that shouldn't be, in relation or direct correlation at all. Like our worthiness is not based on how much we make, but I think that's a big one too, especially when you grow up where, maybe money is more scarce.
What is your best practical suggestion for people, that like there's a lot of sort of like entrepreneurs out there now, of various capacities. So I'm not talking about the ones that are like way ahead, have a crap load of employees, blah, blah, blah. But the ones that are like, right, starting out and they might have multiple things going on that they could, someone like me or, I don't need this personal advice, but just thinking because this, especially the world I'm in with coaches, you're even a coach, right? On that level of public speaking, and there might be a book, there might be this. What's the best way without someone having to jump into like QuickBooks or do some major thing? Where would you start if you're like an individual, you're young out in this world, you're starting out, you're creating a business. How do you keep track? What's your best way to say like, hey, keep track of the shit? This is where you start. Is it with an app that you prefer? Is it like, yeah, you should invest in QuickBooks and just start there? Like what's, how can someone wrap their head around diving into the tracking and monitoring of what's about to happen?
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because that's what I call like that taking an inventory, and you have to know the money side of things for everything, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. So I always say to people, do what works. Because when we think we have to use the fancy app or the spreadsheet, what you find is like, if it's not something you're comfortable with using or doing, you're just not going to do it, or it's going to be like a struggle to get you to. So find a system that works for you and think of it as an awareness exercise, that you want to always be aware of the money side of things, because that's important, whether it's, again, in your business life or your personal life. You can't like get to the next level or achieve the goals if you don't know where you're starting or where you're at right now. Like, how many people don't know the answer to the question, how much money do I have? How much money do I spend? I would say a large majority of people don't know that answer. So you're steps ahead of them if you can just have a
how much am I spending on what,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anything and the different categories and whatnot. So I would say choose a system that works for you rather than, trying to put yourself in a box that maybe isn't what's comfortable, because you're going to find that you're going to sort of fall out and stop doing it. So if it is like you create your own spreadsheet, like I love making my own spreadsheets because I often find like the templates, I just don't feel like it fits sometimes. And I'm like, I don't understand what box would this go into. So I like starting from scratch, and I'm a spreadsheet person, and I like even the writing things down, and I like sometimes having things in my notes section on my phone and whatnot. So I don't know if that's the most orderly of things, but it's what works for me. So choose a method that works for you and think of it as like you need that awareness piece. So you need a tracking or a way that you're going to be able to understand, like, where am I right now? Where am I as far as like inventory with your finances? At all times, you should really know that answer, especially if you're an entrepreneur with a business, because that's such a big piece of it. So I would say don't stress too much on thinking like you have to do all the different systems. But obviously, if you're introduced to one and it makes real like sense to you and you like what it does, then absolutely, those are helpful and they're always going to probably make things more efficient. But don't overwhelm yourself thinking you have to have like 10 different systems on the go, because you probably won't maintain them, or you'll just sort of kind of decide that you don't want to have to deal with it, right? Or push it to the side or another day, and we don't want that. Like, so think whatever's going to help you really be engaged with the numbers and taking that inventory. Do what works for you.
Give us a few success stories here of people who, came from the depths of fear or just disorganization or whatever stands out to you of all the people you've worked with over the years. What are some stories that would inspire others perhaps and be able to relate to people who are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have stories that I share in my book as well, because I think that is important, remembering that people have done this and they've done it with like, not these huge stories of like, I won the lottery and that's how I made it. A story of a woman who was a single mom, like myself. I'm a single mom too. And she did what she could over her working years. So when her kids were young, she wasn't able to put a lot away. Like, she just didn't have a lot of disposable income, but she started with what she could. And I think it was something like $25 a month when she first started. And then as her kids got a little bit older, some of the expenses and costs went down, like daycare and things like that. And she was able to increase it. And then, then they were of an age where they weren't as financially reliant or on her at all, or they were young adults. And then she was able to increase it even further. And she's like well on her way to achieving her financial independence goals, despite the fact that she didn't have a lot. Like, she didn't have a lot of extra income over that time, but she did what she could because it was it's that diligent like habit that she got into. And then, from there, she would make a goal to increase it when the time, like when it was feasible for her. So I think that's, for me, a lesson of like, start now, start where you are. Anything is better than nothing. I would highly, encourage people to remember that. I have couples who never made 6-figure salaries, but retired with over $1 million. And again, we always think, well, you have to make lots of money. You have to have that really high income if you're going to be a millionaire. Well, that's not true either. And again, same thing with them, is they were diligent. They put money away. They did what they could, and they lived within their means. They like made it a goal not to put things on credit and whatnot, like to actually save up for it. And then once they had enough, purchase it at that point in time. And what happened was her company went through restructuring, and she was really nervous about having to find work at that point in time because she was in her mid-50s, and it just made her nervous. She had been at that company for decades. And so we ran the numbers, and where she stood, she was okay to just, even if she didn't get a job, like she was already able to essentially retire or be financially free at that point because she had been doing that all along the way. So I think that's also so inspiring. The really big goals, like I have a young client in her 20s, and she's a very successful entrepreneur. And she's, she is very diligent with her money and whatnot, but she said like she had a really big goal or dream to get a Ferrari, and she got it. And I'm like, oh yeah, those are the things I like too. Cause again, as women, we also like sometimes think like, oh, that would be, greedy, or that doesn't look good for me to be buying this swanky car. Well, of course you can do those things. If that's like your dreams, by all means do it. And we should, cheer those women on that are making these like big goals and achieving them.
Yeah. And I'm happy when I hear that, because if you're out there and that's like, oh, why would you spend money on a Ferrari? The thing is that like, none of your business, man. You know what? You want people judging how you're spending your money and looking at you going, oh, you're so dumb. You know what I mean? We do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. It's like the best way too, to get out of a bad money story with yourself and your own money life is to stop judging how other people spend money. Right? It really is to each their own. The thought may come up, but then just stop and go, hold on a minute. Do you know what I mean? Because it's fair. We live in a world where they're allowed to do what they want with their money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to like it. Maybe they're, spending money to club baby seals in the fucking, Arctic. Okay, great. But you know what I mean? Instead of the extreme examples.
Yes.
So judging how other people, also judging anything really, but how people are spending their money. And so I find that really fascinating as well. And I want to point out, you're talking about certain things like the single mom thing. What I learned from my mom, who's a single mom as well. Wow, did she save so much money with food and food planning?
Yeah.
By bringing her own lunch to work, she saved like $250 a month. And this was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and she's a millionaire. And she was diligent about these things. She did her own nails. She didn't, and so, and then she did still enjoy her life. She still would go to the opera and have, nice things. She had a fur coat. It was amazing. They're expensive, right? Like, so, but she did it in the ways that were like, how can you do it? And so like, she, I remember being like, wow, she could like teach a course on this. Because, she'd go and buy like, right, a package of, 20 chicken breasts and then individually like put them in, freezer bags and put them each, so there was always one ready to pull out, right? Like the kind of level of planning and the money that it saved just showed me how much money you can save with just food, for example. You know what I mean? And then still be able to have splurge and sushi here and there and go out and have enjoying times. But if you're like, the scales are tipped where you're doing that at least 80, if not higher percentage of the time, you're going to prevail.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's finding, like I say to people, it's that being in alignment with your own values, because that too is like when we have a problem with spending, usually what that means is like we're spending money where we don't actually want to be spending it. So take time to think about like what lights you up, what are your, like, what's important. If it's adventure, then maybe, spending money on a cool vacation isn't a waste of money. But when you see, like food delivery services that you're like buying over and over again, like all week long, you're like, oh, like, why did I spend money there? Because, that's not in alignment with your goals. Maybe like just eating takeout isn't the goal, right? But it's that value of, I value adventure, and getting to go on that like really cool trip is amazing. And it's very much in alignment with that. So it's usually when you have a problem with spending or it doesn't feel good, oftentimes that's where it's coming from, that it's not in alignment with your goals. And yeah, exactly. Some people might have goals to have this fancy swanky car, and some people might think that's, crazy, and they like to just buy used cars and not have big car payments. Like everyone has different values and goals and what they want to achieve. And that's okay. Like that's what I call embracing your money uniqueness. Like we're all different, and it's important to embrace your differences.
And accept that about whoever you're working with versus being judged for those. What are some of the things that our audience should know about this topic, or money stories or examples, or anything you'd love to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially like for women, I hope like women hearing this can know that exactly like their financial goals and dreams are possible, and that women can be great with money too. Like in my business, I find a lot of women that come to me are not feeling as confident or sitting on the sidelines with their money and things like that. I want women to really embrace that they're serious earners, that they're smart investors, that like they've got this and they can do all the things they want to do too, and can do it independently or with a partner, or, or some combination of that. Like I want women to really know that they belong in this space too. And when it comes to investing and growing your wealth, that you're part of that conversation, that you deserve to be in that space too. Because I think for so long, this money, thinking of money and finances, it was still very like male dominated for a long time, and times are changing, and I'm appreciative of that, but it's still, I don't think we've still fully caught up. So for me, it's just women really standing in your worth and knowing that you belong in this money conversation. You can achieve any goal it is that you set out to achieve.
Let's talk about your book coming out.
Yeah. So it's called Make Money Your Thing. Again, because I hear the phrase from women like, money's not my thing. So it's about, well, let's make it your thing. And it goes through kind of some of the inner work, like I talked about, so that recognizing your baggage and, seeing what kind of beliefs maybe inside you have that you're not even realizing you have about money. And then actually goes on to okay, let's build that money muscle and take that inventory. Let's understand how much money you have, how much you make, how much you spend. Let's talk about investing as a fabulous way to grow your wealth. So many, I think, people, and unfortunately women especially, are a little bit more scared or hesitant of investing. But investing is a wonderful strategy to grow your wealth. It's compounding interest, and like we can have, you can have huge results from compounding interest, and doing that investing is going to help you grow your worth. So I talk about, how we can make investing less scary, and hopefully then get women more, excited and ready to go out there and invest their money, because it's something that's helping them and building their money. And then it's really about women embracing that money confidence, saying like that they like money, or even that they love money, and being okay with that we can, be in a good relationship with our money, because money isn't anything in itself. It's neutral, but we attach the feelings and the emotions to it. So if it's negative, we're usually the ones doing that, and you can change that. Money can be positive. So I think, from that, I want all women to know, and in that portion of the book, it's like women really embracing that money can be positive. Money can show up as something good in their lives and exciting wherever they're at. Like it isn't just a book for like women that want to be like millionaires or billionaires or anything. It's just for women that want to really improve their relationship with money, where they want to feel good about money and be confident. Because I always say like confidence is what we need to actually like lead us to action. And action is when all the good stuff happens.
Absolutely. Tell us, do you work one-on-one with people? How else can people benefit from your wisdom?
Yeah, I do. Yes. So I'm having the books come out because I would love to reach even more women, but I do work one-on-one as a financial advisor, and my business is focused on working with women. And so I go through like all sorts of money conversations with women, and it's, kind of coming up with their biggest pain points, and then really just looking to target those first and then work towards their biggest goals, whatever those are, like actually coming up with a plan and saying, okay, if this is when you want to retire and this is how much money you want to have, like, and this is where you stand right now, this is what you'd have to do. And let's get that set up. Let's start working towards that and giving them advice on investing and how they're going to have their money grow and help support that goal too. So that's the one-on-one work I do with women as well.
And tell us, even though we'll put it in the show notes, where people can find you.
Yeah, the best place would probably be my website. So it's my first name, last name.com. So kaleeboisvert.com. Yes, if you have any issues spelling it, because it's kind of tricky, I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. And on there, I have my links to my podcast, my blog, my books that are coming out, and yeah, all that fun stuff.
I love it. Any last thoughts before we go?
I don't think so. I think just, yeah, I hope that anyone listening to this just feels really good and inspired. Like money's been a big source of stress coming out of last year. So I hope listening to this, like you feel that, hey, I don't have to feel that way anymore. And there's things I can do and I can control to make myself, feel better and positive and inspired, like, and focus on the things that I can do that are in my control. So hopefully this year we can kind of change that mindset and feel really good, like be intentional about feeling good about our money.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, and for everyone else. We'll see you next week. Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.